The dawn of a new NASCAR season means new teams, new drivers with new teams, new tracks, a new schedule, new NASCAR media partners, some new format, rule adjustments, new goals, new expectations. That's what we're talking about today. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome. It's not really out of the groove, I suppose. Typically, out of the groove is 10 to 15 minutes long. I like to cut out all of my missteps. There's a lot of word vomit, I suppose, that ends up on the cutting room floor. This is not that. This is going to be close to live. If I make any jump cuts here in the next half hour or hour, it's because my voice is getting dry, my allergies are terrible, and I'm taking a swig of water. I'm attempting to do this live because it's good practice. You know, I cut out everything on Out of the Groove to try and make that show as seamless, as efficient as possible. I don't like to waste too much time. I don't like to beat around the bush. I like to get straight to the point. But in this day and age, whether it's live sports, live news, live content, live commentary, live, everything is live. And I feel like in the new year, I need to practice being live. You know, I can't always hide behind my editing software. I need to practice speaking my thoughts, making a clear, concise point in real time. Typically in an Out of the Groove episode, I have pages of notes. Like, it used to just be bullet points. Over the years, it's become several pages of notes I take every single day. I have notes here off to the side, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to read them line for line. I'm not going to rehearse them. We are going to do this right here, right now. God, my voice is already dying. I need some water. Okay, I needed that. Slowly but surely getting comfortable. Please bear with me as I preview the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season. Just me and you here for the next hour or so. We are going to discuss your favorite driver at some point. Daytona, right around the corner. Head to the track starting Thursday. I can't wait. Let's kick things off with the three-time defending NASCAR Cup Series organization, Team Penske. We'll start with Joey Logano, the defending series champion. Like it or not, we all know that his regular season was nothing special. Yes, he won the All-Star race, but his only points-paying win was Nashville Superspeedway. 5 overtimes, fuel mileage race. Turned it on in the playoffs, kind of. Won 3 of the final 10 races, but we all know, 17th place average finish. It wasn't a special overall season for Joey Logano. There was one track type, however, that Joey Logano, and I would argue his 2 other Team Penske teammates especially thrived at, and that is the short, particularly the short flat ovals. Joey Logano last year, I got the stats in front of me. Again, I did say we took some notes for this. Finished second at Richmond in the spring race. And then he was leading the Richmond fall race, of course, before he got wrecked by Austin Dillon. He also led 84 laps at Martinsville and finished 6th in the spring. He was 5th at Gateway, 6th at Iowa. His teammates won Gateway and Iowa. And Joey Logano won North Wilkesboro, the All-Star race, and won Phoenix, of course, the finale. And then he finished 4th at Bowman Gray Stadium to begin the 2025 season. So short, flat ovals are where Joey Logano and Team Penske especially made their living last season. Been a couple of schedule changes. Richmond, for example, lost a date. There's only one Richmond date this year. I think, was it Mexico City that effectively took the second Richmond date? I could be wrong about that. I don't remember exactly how the trade-offs happened. Gateway and New Hampshire, 2 flat ovals. Team Penske was really good at Gateway last summer. Those races have been moved to the playoffs. So if you're counting on winning your way in, 2 less, really 3 less, short, flat ovals to work with in the regular season. The goal for Joey Logano, though, three-time Cup Series champion. The goal is to win the championship. So we're talking goals, expectations. Again, that's the theme of this video / podcast. The goal is to win a championship. You're Joey Logano. You got Paul Wolfe as your crew chief. That's the obvious goal. Let's talk about his teammates, though. Ryan Blaney, I think he has the same goal. Won the 2023 championship. Once you've tasted sweet victory, you just want to get back to it. You just want more. You want a second helping. I think Ryan Blaney has the potential to explode this season. He's won 3 races the past 2 seasons. Is this the year he wins 5 or 6? I think he's capable of it. Really, the last 2 years on paper look really good. It's really been the last year and 2 months, really. Ryan Blaney had a good 2023. He didn't look great until the end of the playoffs, the final 6 weeks. Remember where he won 2 of the last 6? I think he had a couple of runner-up finishes, obviously won the championship, got it done in the clutch. Ryan Blaney, since that Herculean 2023 playoff run, has looked fantastic. 2024, he was really, really good. Again, I mentioned he won Iowa, for example, was in contention to win other races like Gateway before he ran out of fuel and his teammate swooped in to take the victory. He was running down Joey Logano in the closing laps at Phoenix. For a while there, I thought Ryan Blaney was about to go back-to-back, first back-to-back Cup Series champion since Jimmy Johnson, right? That looked to be Ryan Blaney's championship until Joey Logano found that extra gear in the closing laps and held him off. But Ryan Blaney, the goal has to be championship. He's tasted victory, got to go back for seconds. Get that second helping. I know all about that. A switch flipped at the end of 2023. He used to be 1 win Ryan, 1 win a season. Good, not great. He's been great the past year plus. His teammate Austin Cindric, however, I think has different expectations. I'm not expecting a championship. I'm not even really expecting a deep playoff run at this point. I'm expecting Austin Cindric to take a big leap. And a big leap would be winning another non-super speedway race. He got that win at Gateway last season, but took advantage of Blaney running out of fuel, Christopher Bell having mechanical troubles at the end. It was still a great race for Cindric. He led 50-plus laps. I said it a couple weeks ago. That's probably the greatest race Cindric has run in his Cup Series career. And I know he has a Daytona 500 on his resume, but I do look at drafting races a little differently than I look at short tracks or intermediates. Everything had to go right for him to win that Gateway race, but he also had to have a great car and had to keep himself out of trouble for 400 miles. It's tough to do, really tough to do. Daytona, so much is out of your control. Gateway, it's in your control. And Austin Cindric was in control for much of that race last summer. So again, the short, flat ovals, that's been Team Penske's bread and butter. If I'm Austin Cindric, I'm circling those dates. I'm obviously circling the super speedways. He does lead a lot of laps on the drafting tracks, but I'm looking for a big leap. This is year 4. Cindric, I think, is 26 years old. He was great in the Xfinity Series. He's an Xfinity Series champion. We know he's good. We know he's great even. He hasn't shown us consistent greatness since getting to Cup. I was willing to give him some slack in year 1, year 2, winning that Daytona 500 right off the bat. I think, took some weight off his shoulders, but now we're in year 4. I need to see a leap, especially from a Team Penske driver. Team wins 3 straight championships. The goal should be better than, hey, hopefully you win a super speedway race. You know what I mean? Team Penske adjacent. Let's talk about Josh Berry for a moment. My goal for Josh Berry, I think the bar is low, considering where the Wood brothers have been the past few seasons with Harrison Burton. Yes, they won Daytona last summer. Great push at the end from Parker Retzlaff. Great job blocking Kyle Busch, coming to the line. Harrison Burton did everything right. Again, it's a Daytona win. That win was such a boost for the Wood brothers, points-wise, financially. And now Josh Berry gets to be the beneficiary of that. There's a new crew chief over there, Miles Stanley. He's a Team Penske engineer, so they promoted from within. I don't know much about him. I hope he's good. He's a Team Penske guy. He must be pretty good. I think Josh Berry is good. I think he's a little better than Harrison Burton at this stage in his career. But remember, this was a playoff team just a few years ago with Matt DiBenedetto. And I don't think anyone thinks Matt DiBenedetto is, amazing. I think he's a very good driver. I think he's a better driver than some fans would be willing to give him credit for. But Matt DiBenedetto, just 4 years ago, roughly, got this team into the playoffs on points. I'm not expecting Josh Berry to do that this year, but I am expecting top 25. I'm expecting them to be better consistently than they've been the past few seasons. That should be the goal. Let's talk about Joe Gibbs Racing now. I want to talk about Toyota. Denny Hamlin. We'll just start with Denny Hamlin because I think Denny Hamlin is the most probably the most interesting story out of Joe Gibbs Racing this year. Obviously we've talked this offseason about sponsorship concerns. FedEx is gone. Mavis is gone. They're still chasing that new anchor sponsor. We've also talked about the crew chief change. Chris Gabehart, they had a ton of success the past few years. He got promoted within. Now it's Chris Gale, who has been with Ty Gibbs the last couple of years. I think before that he was in Xfinity, and then before that he was with Eric Jones. He's a Joe Gibbs Racing vet at this point, but his resume, at least on the Cup side, isn't super strong. So we'll see how Chris Gale and Denny Hamlin sort of get to know each other. There's off-track stuff with Denny, of course. His team is suing NASCAR. He's got his podcast, family stuff. Denny Hamlin, there's a lot going on. And he's also, at the same time, the oldest full-time driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. I told y'all my theory a few days ago, I should say. Denny Hamlin is a great short-track racer. And Goodyear continues to develop a softer and softer short track tire. I just think that plays to Denny's strengths. At that track type in particular, Denny Hamlin is going to be very good this season. So that's why when I hear people predict, Denny's going to fall off, Jimmy couldn't win his last couple of years. Truex kind of sort of struggled last year. Harvick was winless his final season. Some folks are predicting that type of fall off for Denny Hamlin this season. And I just don't agree. He's 44 years old. That's old for a football player. It's not old for a race car driver. I mean, we saw Kevin Harvick winning races in his mid-40s. Matt Kenseth was still winning in his mid-40s. So I think Denny Hamlin still has the tools, still has the skill, the ability to be really, really, really good this season. But I do think the first couple months are important, because if they struggle these first few months, the questions will come quick. Is Chris Gale the right fit? Hey, Denny, what's your contract status past this year? Has Joe Gibbs been able to find a new big sponsor for you? The Kyle Busch exit comparisons will come quick, and that's only going to add to Denny Hamlin's list of distractions. So I think Denny's going to be good this year. He's won multiple races in 6 consecutive seasons. I see no reason really to doubt Denny Hamlin in 2025. But if they get off to a slow start, the distractions will get louder, noisier, and noisier. You don't want that. You don't want that. Let's talk about Christopher Bell real quick, because he's been statistically the leader at Joe Gibbs Racing the past couple of seasons. Goal for Christopher Bell is to win the championship. Of course, he's been to the championship for 2 of the last 3 years. They finished top 5 in points 3 straight seasons. Adam Stevens on the pit box is a 2-time Cup Series champion, and Bell seems to be having a blast. I'm not sure any driver's having more fun this offseason than Christopher Bell. Joe Gibbs finally lifted the dirt racing ban, and Christopher Bell is taking full advantage. He won the Tulsa Shootout in his home state of Oklahoma a few weeks back. I just saw he won a World of Outlaws race for the first time in 6 years at Volusia, I believe. So Christopher Bell is having a blast this offseason, and you look at his on-track performance in Cup the last few years. He's 30 years old. He's only going to get better. I think he's entering his prime officially this year. That's kind of scary. I think Bell is a legit championship threat. How about the younger guys over at JGR? Chase Briscoe is not much younger than Christopher Bell, I don't think, but he's new to Gibbs this year, driving the 19, taking over for Martin Truex Jr. My goal for Briscoe, and I think everyone will have slightly different goals for Chase Briscoe this season. My goal for Briscoe is to win a race and at least make the round of 12. Win a race, you might be saying. That should be the bare minimum for a Joe Gibbs Racing driver. Yeah, you'd think that, but Joe Gibbs Racing hasn't won any races in 6 months. Or I'm sorry, they didn't win any races the second half of last season. Ty Gibbs and Martin Truex Jr., this 19 car went winless all of last season. In fact, the 19, with James Small at the helm, has gone winless 2 of the last 3 seasons. So winning a race is not guaranteed. I think Chase Briscoe and his crew chief, James Small, have a lot to prove this season. I think James Small is already feeling some of the pressure. I saw the story this past week that he told Chase Briscoe, you got to eat better, man. You got to lose some weight. Wants him to lose 15 pounds by Daytona. I'm not sure what Chase Briscoe's most recent weigh-in looks like, but some of the preseason interviews, he looks maybe a touch slimmer for sure. But it sounds like James Small is the one pushing him to get in shape, get fit. James Small has a lot to prove. Winless 2 of the last 3 years with Truex. It seemed like their relationship was a little rocky towards the end. Truex likely not fully invested, not fully engaged, one foot out the door towards retirement. I think that rubbed James Small the wrong way. He's a relatively young crew chief, wants to have a long, successful racing career. He demands a lot of his drivers. I think Chase Briscoe is going to be really good this year, but right off the bat, there's pressure on this duo to perform. Ty Gibbs. My goal for Ty Gibbs this year is to win a race. We've seen him run top 5. We've seen him run top 10. We've seen him lead laps. We've seen him make the playoffs. We haven't seen him win a race. This is year 3. I know he's really young, but this is year 3. I've said it before. Kyle Larson won his first race in year 3. William Byron won his first race in year 3. Chase Elliott won his first race in year 3. Eric Jones, I believe, Austin Cindric won their first non-super speedway races in year 3. So that's kind of the mark. That's the benchmark, I should say, for a young driver racing for a top team like Joe Gibbs Racing. You should win in year 3. If Ty Gibbs does what he did last season, makes the playoffs maybe on points, okay, it's not a bad year, but it would still be mildly disappointing. I think winning a race is the mark of a successful junior season for Ty Gibbs. That's my prediction. It's been a year and a half. Think about it. It's been over a year and a half since Ty Gibbs won any NASCAR race. He was 0 for 6 in Xfinity starts last season. He's not winning like he used to. Can he keep his cool? I call that into question because we saw him lose his cool at Bowman Gray a few weeks ago or a few days ago. That is Bowman Gray. It's the madhouse. But hope Ty Gibbs can keep his cool and stay focused. So we've talked about a Ford team. We've talked about a Toyota team. Let's talk about fan favorite Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet. We'll start with Kyle Larson. I think everyone assumes his goal should be win the championship. I'm thinking bigger than that. I'm saying Kyle Larson's goal, be the best driver in the world. I don't know if he cares about that narrative. He did bring it up last year when talking about Max Verstappen. He brought it up on his own. But I think fans care about that narrative. Kyle Larson is 32. He's in his prime as a race car driver. He's averaging almost 6 race wins per season since joining Hendrick Motorsports. If you win the championship, great. The goal should be championship for sure. But the goal is to just keep winning races. And I'm not just talking about cup races. I'm talking about midweek races. I saw he won, I think, a World of Outlaws race the other night as well. Keep winning midweek races. Keep winning Sunday races. Contend at Indianapolis. Hopefully the double goes better this year, weather-wise, performance-wise. Would love to see Kyle Larson finish the job, top 5, top 10 in the Indianapolis 500. That would be huge. Kyle Larson may deep down not care much about the best driver in the world narrative, but his fans do. So that's the goal for Larson this year. Just keep being great. Put on a show Monday through Sunday, really Sunday through Sunday. Put on a show every night of the week. He's the only driver in Cup capable of doing that. How about Chase Elliott? This is what's crazy to me is Hendrick Motorsports. Remember in like 2018, 2019, when a lot of these guys were young, they had a down couple of years, weren't winning many races, weren't really in contention. Felt like Joe Gibbs Racing and Penske and Stuart Haas had sort of taken over for a couple of years there. Now those young guys that we weren't 100% sold on 6 years ago, they're all entering their prime. I mean, Larson, I just said, is 32. Chase Elliott is 29. Byron is even 27 now. And Alex Bowman is 31. Like, race car drivers hit their stride, late 20s, early 30s. These guys are all entering their prime golden years. The goal for Chase Elliott should be to win a championship or at least win multiple races again. He's won one race the past 2 years. One points-paying race, I should say. Bowman Gray, I know it was an exhibition, kind of a weird track. Maybe I've read too much into it, but that race combined with how he finished last season, Elliott led a bunch of laps at Martinsville, Homestead, was a top 5 threat the final 3 or 4 races of last year. The way he finished last year combined with that dominant performance and the Clash, this could be a big year for Chase, a big bounce back year. Remember, before the snowboarding injury, before the disastrous 2023 and somewhat anticlimactic 2024, Chase Elliott went to 3 straight championship fours, 2020 through 2022. He was winning multiple races a year and making deep playoff runs. He was part of the conversation late in the season. That hasn't been the case the last 2 years. I think 2025 is going to be a bounce back season. William Byron's an interesting one because he's so quiet. He's so hard to predict. Won the Daytona 500 last year, but I don't feel like that's getting a lot of press, a lot of promotion headed into this year's race. Maybe it's because it was, it ended under controversy or under caution, controversial. It was NASCAR pressed the button right before Bowman passed him. I guess it's because last year's race finished sort of anticlimactically. But William Byron is another guy who's been to 2 straight championship fours. He's there late in the season. He's consistent when he needs to be consistent. He and Rudy Fugle win races when they need to win races, when they have dominant cars. I think the goal for Byron should be to break through and actually win the title. Championship fours are great. I think they deserve to be celebrated, hang the banner. But once you get to a couple of championship fours, you want to win the championship four. That should be the goal for William Byron this year. Maybe focus on those short, flat tracks a little more. And Alex Bowman, his goal should be to win multiple races. Consistency is great, and we saw that especially at the start of the playoffs last season. But I want to see him win races and lead more laps. Even that win at Chicago, it was a darkness-shortened race. Reddick was the better car at the end, just ran out of time, made a mistake. I think Christopher Bell even would have probably caught him, but got caught up in a wreck. Bowman led only 67 laps all of last season, and half of those came at Bristol, where you can rack up laps led pretty quickly if you get out front and get some clean air. So I just want to see Alex Bowman look like 2020 Bowman again. I know he didn't dominate that season, but he did lead a couple hundred laps, and he won 4 races. Call it right place, right time. You win 4 races, that's legit. I want to see that version of Alex Bowman again. I need another sip of water. Losing my voice. How am I doing? Am I doing okay? I've only had to make a couple of cuts so far. I know I do a live stream every week, but there I have a couple of buddies that I can bounce things off of. I don't have to carry the show. We got the live chat. You guys will chime in and offer ideas, jokes, opinions. There's always something to feed off of. Here, I got nothing to feed off of. This is more stressful than I thought it would be. Okay, but we're making some good progress here. Checking my notes. Let's go to 2311 Racing. I think that's the next stop on the tour here. Tyler Reddick made it to the championship 4 last year, got a taste of the big time. I think the goal should be to win the championship. More specifically, I think the goal for Tyler Reddick and 2311 should be to close that gap to the big boys. The big boys being Gibbs, Penske, Hendrick. Like 2311 is a satellite team. I mean, that's what they are. Without Joe Gibbs Racing's data, they'd be nothing, quite frankly. They'd be Legacy Motor Club at best, So it's so hard for a satellite team, an affiliate, an alliance team to break through and beat the top dogs. I mean, really one of the last times, I think the last time it was done was a Toyota Gibbs satellite team. It was Furniture Row Racing with Martin Truex Jr. That was the last time it was done. Stuart Haas won the couple of championships, but there was a time there where Stuart Haas was a big gun. Like, if I go back in time, when was the last time a non-Gibbs, Hendrick, Penske, or Haas car won besides Truex? I guess it would be Roush in 03-04 with Kenseth and Kurt Busch. And Roush at the time was a big boy. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it is difficult for these smaller, let's say, aligned satellite teams to win the championship. They can win a race here and there. They can make deep playoff runs for sure. We see it all the time. Trackhouse a couple of years ago. But to actually win the championship is really hard. So that should be the goal for Reddick and 2311. Find a way to close that gap, because as consistent as Reddick was during the regular season last year, regular season champion and all that, once the playoffs started and everyone stepped their game up, brought their best up, Reddick was inconsistent, very up and down. Heroic last lap at Homestead to get into the championship four, to salvage his rocky playoffs. But once we got to Phoenix, I mean, Reddick was nowhere close to the Hendrick and Penske guys. Like Blaney, Logano, Byron, much faster, much more consistent than Reddick was. That's where they need to close the gap. That's the goal for this season. I'll talk about Riley Herbst briefly. I think his goal is a little more, the bar is lower. His goal should just be to improve throughout the season. I'm not a Riley Herbst. I don't mean to be a Riley Herbst hater. I think some people assume that I am, but I think I'm just a realist. 3 Xfinity wins in 5 years in top equipment. It's not great. And, we talk about Ty Gibbs. He gave us a wow moment in Xfinity. Remember when he won in his Xfinity debut, Daytona Road Course? Whoa. Noah Gragson. He was up and down, but had some whoa moments where you went, that guy can drive a race car. That guy's edge of his seat. That's exciting. Austin Cindric almost won 2 straight championships in Xfinity. Wow. Where was the wow with Riley Herbst? Other than that Las Vegas race a year and a half ago where he won by 15 seconds, that was pretty cool. I'll give him that. There hasn't been a wow moment or stat with Riley Herbst. He's been okay. And then last year, I would say, was pretty good. He was pretty good last year. That was year 5 in Xfinity, full-time, great equipment. There are fast learners, and then there are guys that are slowly but surely figuring it out. That's who Riley Herbst is, which is why I don't expect him to jump into the Cup Series this year and light the world on fire. I just don't. He's never done that in his NASCAR career. Instead, I expect him to start slow and figure it out. Small incremental gains throughout the season. I like that he's bringing his Xfinity crew chief, Davin Restivo, over, so there's already some familiarity. He doesn't have to learn an entirely new group of guys. He's got that familiar anchor there with him. I like that, but my expectations for Herbst are measured to start the year. Bubba Wallace. I would love to set a much higher goal, but I just can't. I think the goal for Bubba this year is to win a regular season race and make the playoffs. That's the goal. Bubba Wallace has never won a regular season race. His 2 Cup wins both came in the playoffs. Both times he'd already missed the postseason or already been eliminated. Bubba Wallace has never made, the 23 car has never made the owners' playoffs. Bubba made the drivers' playoffs a couple years ago because Chase Elliott got hurt and suspended and missed some time. But that car still didn't make the playoffs. The 9 car did. So this is year 5 for Bubba Wallace in 23XI Racing. Bubba's been in Cup longer than that. This is year 8, I think, for Bubba Wallace. Maybe 8 or 9. The training wheels are off. And I think that message was delivered when Booty Barker got replaced with Charles Deneke. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I've heard it Deneke. I've also heard it Denike. Not sure. Charles was great the past couple years in the Truck Series with Christian Eckes. Won races, contended for championships. It was awesome. I think that's the new, fresh blood Bubba Wallace needs to take that next step. Bubba Wallace, fine driver, but he's not as good as Tyler Reddick. He's lagged behind his teammate in terms of pure speed the past couple of seasons. I think there need to be a change there. Booty Barker is likable, easygoing, a good culture guy, experienced, but Charles Deneke has recent race wins on his resume, and you never know. He could be the next big thing. I like that move, but I think you got to walk before you can run. Walking for Bubba Wallace in 23XI would be winning a regular season race and making the playoffs, making the owners' playoffs for the first time in that car's 4+ year history. Let's just finish up the Toyotas here. We'll talk about legacy real quick. They're kind of hard to predict. John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Jones, for that matter, I think their goals should just be to improve throughout the year. Last season was such a disappointment, but hopefully they built out a solid notebook that they can apply here in year 2. Year 1, first year with Toyota, no Gibbs alliance, not getting any data from Gibbs, using the Toyota resources to build their own database. Year 1 was strictly a building year. Now they have a notebook, a baseline. Can they apply new data in 2025 to take a step forward? That should be the goal. A lot of personnel moves, ownership moves as well. With there's a what are they called? The Knights of the Round Table or something. There's something capital management has bought a minority stake in the team. Maury Gallagher and GMS are kind of now on the outskirts. It's Jimmy Johnson handling the day-to-day. I read a report that he's moved back to Charlotte, North Carolina, at least for the time being. Going to be more hands-on. I like that. Goal for Jones and Nemechek is just to get better throughout the year. Hopefully, the data they collected in year 1 can be applied well here in year 2 to make them faster. That should just be the goal. Be faster than you were last season. Richard Childress Racing, another team that had a very down, disappointing 2024. Austin Dillon, we'll start with him. I think the goal should be top 20 in points. I mean, last year he was 32nd in points, so that would be a huge jump. But we forget that for a while there, Austin Dillon was a consistent playoff driver. Like Austin Dillon, I don't have the number written down, one note I forgot to write, made the playoffs like 4 out of 6 years, something like that. Like we're used to seeing the 3 in the playoffs, usually a first, second round exit, but he's used to making it. The last 2 years, it hasn't looked like the same team. Austin Dillon hasn't looked like the same driver. 2 years ago, he had 10 DNFs. Made a crew chief change. Richard Boswell comes over from Stewart Haas. I like that move, but I don't know if it's enough to drag this team from the depths they were under in 2024. Let's talk about Kyle Busch. Reportedly in a contract year, I think there's pressure on Kyle to remind everyone that he's still got it, that he's still one of the GOATs, let's say. You know, Kyle Busch did win 3 races 2 years ago with Richard Childress Racing. That's hard to do. That's impressive. But last year was such a struggle. Heard a lot about how, the next gen car doesn't really suit his hang it out, drive it loose driving style, but the best drivers should be able to adapt. I think Kyle Busch is capable of adapting. He needs to show RCR and any other possible teams that he's capable of it this year. So there is some pressure on Kyle, but there's more pressure on Richard Childress Racing. Without Kyle Busch, what is Richard Childress Racing? It's Austin Dillon and Austin Hill. Are they going to cross their fingers and hope Jesse Love develops rapidly and they can put him in Cup sooner rather than later? Like, without Kyle Busch, RCR is irrelevant, frankly, the rate they're going. So they need to prove to Kyle Busch that they are capable of giving him quality race cars, winning race cars, playoff championship contending race cars. And like Denny Hamlin, I think the first couple months are extremely important because if they struggle, Kyle's going to look elsewhere. He already planted the seed last year that if Gibbs or Hendrick had an opening, he would go. He would return to one of his former teams. That puts pressure on RCR to figure it out. How do you keep Kyle Busch happy? How do you convince Kyle Busch to sign a longer-term extension? Without Kyle Busch, Richard Childress Racing is irrelevant. Man, focusing on Kyle Busch specifically for a moment, remember just a few years ago, I felt the question was not if, but when he catches Dale Earnhardt in wins. When will Kyle Busch hit that 76 win mark? He's at 63 now. But recently, the question has shifted from not when, but will Kyle Busch catch Dale Earnhardt's 76 wins? One of the big stories this week that I'm excited to follow is Daytona 500. Kyle Busch's 20th attempt. Took Dale Earnhardt 20 attempts to finally win the Daytona 500 for Richard Childress Racing. The stars are aligning for Kyle Busch, future Hall of Famer, to finally break through and win the biggest race in the sport. He's been really close the past couple of seasons. Let's talk about another Chevy team. How about Trackhouse? They added a third full-time car this year. I want to talk about Ross Chastain real quick. The goal for him should be to finish where you run. It'd be nice to make a deep playoff run, but look at these numbers real quick. In 2022, first year with Trackhouse, he had 15 top 5 finishes. Pretty darn good. Next year, he had 10. This year, he had 6. Oh, that's concerning. That's very concerning. He has been able to win every year since getting to Trackhouse, but last year was his first season without multiple wins. So Trackhouse, objectively speaking, is trending this direction. We can all see it. It's plain as day. They are not trending the right direction. Did they get worse? I don't know. I think other teams, specifically some of the bigger teams with more resources, more data, more engineers, I think they've just figured out this next-gen car quicker than Trackhouse did. When the next-gen was new, Trackhouse hit on something and got out to a hot start. But now that everyone has 2-3 years of data, I think Trackhouse is falling behind, unfortunately. So I like Ross. I think he could have a big season, but it all depends on Trackhouse. They've expanded. Are they going to have the resources to compete with the big guns? I want to talk about Shane Van Gisbergen, full-time Cup. The ovals are going to be a struggle. Some of the short ones he'll be okay. Like he was good at Bowman Gray last year in Xfinity. He ran well at Phoenix in the spring, finished top 10. I think he was competitive at Martinsville. He'll be good at some of the short, heavy braking ovals, but on the intermediates, he's going to struggle. He just is. Shane Van Gisbergen will run probably 28th at most of the intermediate ovals. So if he wants to make the playoffs, he's going to need to win either on a super speedway or more likely on a road course. I picked SVG to make the playoffs this year because there are 5 road courses in the regular season, including Mexico City, which I'm not sure, most of the Cup Series field has never seen, and those who have raced it, it's been years, and it was in a different car. So I think SVG has a very good opportunity to win a race and make the playoffs. That way, that should be his goal. Daniel Suarez, another interesting driver, signed a 1-year extension with Trackhouse just for this season. I said in my bold predictions video a few days ago that this would be the final season for Suarez and Trackhouse. I did say that was a bold prediction, but just after that win at Atlanta, the photo finish win, Suarez was really inconsistent last year. And I mentioned it. Trackhouse is going this direction right now, performance-wise. If things don't start to turn around, Suarez is going to ask questions, and Justin Marks is going to ask questions. Connor Zilic won his Xfinity Series debut last year, going to get some Cup opportunities this season. He's really young, but really, really talented. Could be itching for a full-time Cup opportunity sooner rather than later. If Suarez doesn't figure it out this year, I wouldn't be shocked if a Zilic or someone else ends up in that seat in 2026. So there's a lot of pressure on Daniel. Look at the numbers. Daniel needs to qualify better. The 99 just needs to do better on Saturdays. They had an average starting position of worse than 20th last season. That was worse than Chase Briscoe, Michael McDowell, Carson Hocevar, Austin Dillon, Josh Berry. His own teammate Ross Chastain had an average start of more than 5 positions better. So that's something that Daniel Suarez and the 99 team could absolutely improve on. With stage points up for grabs, you got to start the race better. Let's talk about Front Row and Spire, two teams that are very difficult to predict, but that I'm very interested to watch, especially early this season. We'll start with Front Row. I know guys like Noah Gragson, Zane Smith, good friends. I feel like the vibes with this team are really positive, but it's a young team. 3 drivers in their mid-20s, not a ton of Cup Series experience. Noah Gregson's goal, I think, should just be to improve throughout the season. This is his 3rd different team in 3 years. Just get your footing. That should be the goal for Noah Gragson. We know he has talent. Once he refines it, he could be really, really good. This year is just about getting settled, especially early on. Todd Gilliland, my goal for Todd, and maybe this is a bold, and it's not really a prediction. Maybe I'm being too bold when I set this goal. But Todd Gilliland should expect to be the best driver at Front Row. He should be leading by example. And I know that might sound crazy, because if we compare Todd Gilliland's resume to Zane Smith and Noah Gregson's, there really is no comparison. Zane Smith is a Truck Series champion, consistent winner in the lower ranks. Noah Gragson won a bunch of Xfinity Series races. Todd Gilliland's resume does not compare. But the reason I have high hopes for Todd Gilliland this year, one, he is the most veteran Front Row driver of this group. He's very familiar with how Front Row Motorsports operates. But 2, Todd Gilliland took such a huge jump from 2023 to 2024. In 2023, he had a 28th place points finish. Last year, 22nd. 6 position points improvement. That's pretty dramatic. He was great at the super speedways, led a bunch of laps. I think Todd Gilliland has the potential to be the best driver at Front Row. That should be his goal for this year. Lead by example. Zane Smith was really good second half of last season. I'd say 18th place average finish second half of last year. That was right there in line with Carson Hocevar's average finish for the year, who won Rookie of the Year. So if not for that awful first half, Zane Smith would have very much been in contention for Rookie of the Year, despite driving at the time for a new Trackhouse Spire entry that was still trying to figure it all out. I think Zane Smith returning to Front Row should be comfortable. He has Gilliland's crew chief from last year, Ryan Burgundy, should be good. I didn't mention this earlier, but Gilliland teaming up with Truck Series Championship crew chief Chris Lawson is another advantage I think Todd Gilliland has. This team's tough to predict. I think they'll all run similar to one another, but I think expectations are higher for Todd Gilliland just because he's been there the longest. I guess I'll put it that way. Spire Motorsports. Again, I have no idea what to predict. I guess for Justin Haley, the goal should be to keep showing us flashes. Like Spire Motorsports, they dropped Corey LaJoie because they were ready to go. Run top 5, run top 10, and that really wasn't Corey LaJoie. He was more of a game manager. Hey, if the car's a 30th place car, I'll get you a 25th place run. But the moment Spire started giving LaJoie 15th place cars, he didn't seem to know how to get him into the top 10. Justin Haley needs to show us that he can take a 15th place car and run 10th. He did that a few times with Ware Racing last year, upped his draft stock quite a bit. Perhaps now he's even slightly overrated. We forget that Haley never won an Xfinity race outside of a super speedway. Won 4 super speedway races, but he never won an intermediate, never won a short track. We might be overrating Justin Haley a tad. It helps that he has Rodney Childress on the pit box, but that's his goal. I'm not saying playoffs, win races, just show us flashes. We didn't see a lot of flashes from the 7 last year. That's why they brought Justin Haley in, to try and give us something to talk about, something positive to talk about. Michael McDowell, meanwhile, I think he should win a race and make the playoffs. That should be the goal for Michael McDowell. Great super speedway racer, led a bunch of laps last season, was one wrong turn away from winning at Talladega. He's also a great road course racer. He's won a Cup road course race in recent seasons in the next-gen car, with 5 regular season road courses and 5 regular season super speedway type races, I believe. Yes, that's 10 opportunities, 10 golden opportunities for McDowell to win a race. I think he's capable of it. Carson Hocevar, defending Rookie of the Year. Okay, sorry guys. My camera is trying to send me a message. You're not good at this live stream of consciousness stuff. My memory card filled up too quickly. Gosh, goodness. I had to delete an old backlog of material that I'd forgotten to delete. That's on me. That's my bad. We're back. Where did I leave off? I think Carson Hocevar, the last guy from Spire, haven't talked about. I think the goal should be to win a race this year. Why not? I think he's got the speed, the skill, the ability to do it. The question really is patience. When to push, when to rein it in. We saw in the Clash, it's got him into some trouble. Had top 10 pace, looked really good. Made too many enemies and got wrecked before the finish. That's going to be the thing Carson Hocevar struggles with this year. His reputation precedes him. He needs to rebuild his reputation while also running up front. I could see a very similar Ross Chastain type arc for Carson Hocevar this year. We'll see. I think he can win. Why not? Let's talk about RFK Racing. We're getting down here into the home stretch. Brad Keselowski has not won multiple races in a season since the COVID season. So that should be the goal. Win multiple races, make the playoffs. That should be the goal for Brad Keselowski. He's about to turn 41, not going to have many prime years left. The good news is that Brad Keselowski went out and signed Jeremy Bullins to be his crew chief. That's who his crew chief was in 2020 when he won those 4 races with Team Penske. So I like that duo. Fun to see them reunite. Keselowski had a lot of good runs last season, especially in the first half, but they were somewhat inconsistent in the second half. I think that's probably why they went out and made a crew chief change. Hopefully, Keselowski, Bullins can find that magic once again. Chris Buescher, difficult to predict. He has won every year of the next gen, but last season missed the playoffs, not because he was bad. He just wasn't good enough to overcome the lack of wins. Darlington ripped his heart out. Kansas, ripped his heart out. So they had to overcome some back-breaking losses early in the season. Still got that win at Watkins Glen after the playoffs had already begun. Running it back with Scott Graves once again. I think Chris Buescher is a playoff contender. If they truly hit on it, they could be a deep playoff contender. I don't see championship contention from RFK Racing this year. Again, see previous argument. It's hard to beat the top 3 or 4 teams when it comes to winning the championship. I don't think RFK is there yet, but signing Kroger, huge sponsor, blue chip, great to land that. That helps. Adding Ryan Preece, I think, helps as well. Everyone says 3 cars is like the sweet spot in the next-gen era. 1 car is tough. 2 cars, you can kind of feed off each other. 3 cars, that's the best balance of data, performance, resources. 4, only the top dogs can handle that kind of undertaking. Ryan Preece, I think the goal should be top 20 in points. It'd be awesome if he could win a race. I feel like I've heard so much about how good Ryan Preece is, but we haven't seen a lot of it. He's never been in a great Cup Series car. That's the thing. JTG Doherty was not good. Stuart Haas there at the end, not very good. RFK is probably the best Cup car he's ever raced full time. So I want to set higher expectations, but we haven't seen Preece do much in Cup. We've seen him win some Xfinity races. We've even seen him win some truck races recently, but it's hard to set realistic expectations for Preece, especially when he's driving a brand new 3rd RFK car. There's a lot of uncertainty there. Top 20 in points, contend for a playoff spot. That's That's a reasonable goal, I think, for Ryan Preece. All right. Final few here. Let's talk about Kaulig Racing. I love the Ty Norris get late last year. Helped build Trackhouse into a contender on the business side. Hopefully can do the same for Kaulig Racing. I'm not as in love with their driver lineup. I like AJ Allmendinger. Allmendinger deserves to be in Cup, and with 5 road course races, he could absolutely win his way into the playoffs for sure. I mean, last year, running a part-time Cup schedule, he led laps at Sonoma, finished 6th at Coda, finished 6th at the Roval, I believe. He's a 3-time road course winner in the Cup Series. He's won in the next gen car a couple years ago. So I like AJ Allmendinger in Cup. Winning a road course race absolutely is a reasonable goal. But Ty Dillon, Ty's a great guy. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the past couple of years. Really good dude, passionate about racing. It's been awesome to see him, I don't want to say rebuild his career, but from Germain Racing to then no ride, to then just scrounging together part-time deals, to now full-time in Cup again. Yes, it's Kaulig, not one of the top teams, but to be back in Cup full-time, I respect the arc he's been on, the drive, the commitment he's made. I think he's fine for that car. He'll probably run 25th every week. Hopefully keeps his nose clean. That's kind of what Kaulig needs right now. I would classify them as a building team. And Ty Dillon will bring some sponsorship and is a veteran. I think this can work. I think this can work for what Kaulig needs right now. How about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Hyak Motorsports? It's basically JTG Doherty. My goal for Stenhouse is feel like the goal is just to win a super speedway race. That's sort of the benchmark of a successful season for Ricky Stenhouse. He's won a super speedway race 2 years in a row, made the playoffs in 2023 because of that Daytona 500 win. He's got 4 super speedway wins on his Cup Series resume. I should have looked up where that ranks him among all-time Cup drivers. I know it's not as high as Keselowski or Logano. How many does Denny have? He's got those 3 Daytona wins, but does Denny have any other super speedway wins? He has to, right? Blaney's got a couple at least. I don't know where Stenhouse's 4 ranks him on the active list, but it's got to be pretty high. So that's what determines a successful season for Stenhouse. He's not going to contend consistently on any other type track, but super speedways, he could be up front and make some magic happen. So that's a successful year for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Cody Ware. A lot of folks were upset that Rick Ware put his son back in the 51, and I get it. This team was getting better. Justin Haley looked pretty good in the 51 last year with crew chief Chris Lawson, but I wasn't outraged. I get it. The guy owns the team. If he wants to put his son in there, it makes business sense. And to be fair to Cody Ware, I know it was a fairly limited sample size last season. He ran okay. I think he had an average finish of 21st. Pretty good for Rick Ware Racing standards. So I don't hate it. Goal for Cody Ware, just improve throughout the year. Hopefully this team can continue to build forward. Only 1 full-time entry this year. That will be interesting. Let's wrap up with Haas factory team Cole Custer. Goal for them as well is improve throughout the season. Specifically, it'd be nice if they get into the top 20 in points. I'm setting that standard because Aaron Kramer, team's crew chief, comes from RFK Racing, has already made the bold comparison to Roush, saying that this is effectively a 4th Roush car. Roush is a playoff team, so if you're a Roush car, you should contend for a playoff spot. So I'll couch my vague expectation, my vague goal with a more specific goal of top 20 in points. I think that would be pretty good. This isn't the same young, inexperienced Cole Custer we saw a few years ago. Since his last Cup Series stint, he's won 5 Xfinity races. He's won the Xfinity Series title. He's put some hair on his chest. So Cole Custer should be expected to perform out the box, in my opinion. 27 years old, he's still young. I'm not saying he's in his prime yet, but what we see these first few months is kind of what I think we're going to get with Cole Custer. I hope he figures it out. I like the guy. I want to see Haas factory team be competitive. We'll see how they do. My expectations are fairly mild based on what we saw from Stuart Haas last season. I think that's going to do it. Okay, sorry, I had to make another cut because my camera ran out of battery. So we had memory card full, battery failing on me. I'm not cut out for this long form, out of the groove episode style, it seems. That's why this is practice. That's why I prefaced this at the beginning. We're just practicing here. Thank you all for sticking with me. Let me know if you agree with my assessment or my expectations for your favorite driver down in the comment section below. I'm not sure if we'll do long form episodes like this with any frequency, maybe for special occasions, big stories, special races, maybe we'll do something like this. I just wanted to get some practice in. Also wanted a chance to really talk about every individual driver. Once the season gets rolling, we're talking about one race, then just a few days later there's another race. It all starts to blend together. It just gets mixed and mashed into this giant soup bowl. So I wanted to take some time here today to dedicate a segment to every full-time Cup driver. I hope you enjoyed listening, watching, following along. I will see you all again soon with a more traditional Out of the Groove episode. Have a great rest of your day, folks. I'll see you at Daytona.